So recently I accomplished something in my golf game that, if I'm being honest with myself, I never thought would happen.
72, you broke par.
Wait, it's a par 73?
Yeah, first time in your life.
In my life.
You broke
That's awesome.
bleeping par.
For the first time in my life, I actually broke par. And this has actually been a really long journey for me. I've been playing golf for well over 2 decades, and for a long time, I struggled just to break 90. But over the past 6 to 12 months, I've shifted quite a few things in my on-course strategy that has paid off big time. And the key word there is strategy. I'm not gonna be talking about any swing changes or anything highly technical, but instead I wanna cover 5 points that I've been using to play smarter golf, and it has translated to better scores than I ever expected that I could be shooting. Oh, and over the past 5 years, I've also been using my ShotScope watch to track my statistics for every single round I've played, including the round where I recently shot under par. So being a bit of a data nerd, we're also gonna dive into those stats and see how those link up with some of these points that help me shoot lower scores. But if you guys can do this and focus on what I'm about to tell you, I guarantee it's gonna help your scores as well. So let's get on the golf course and I'll walk you through everything I did to shoot under par as an 8 handicap. All right, so we're out here on the course, and the first tip that I have that me personally was really hard, honestly, for me to shift my focus and do this, but it's been a real game changer for me, is the idea of stopping chasing birdies and instead putting as much focus as possible on trying to eliminate the big number. And to kind of drive that point home, ShotScope has analyzed millions of shots. And one statistic that really gave me a lot of confidence in putting my energy and focus here is the fact that, surprisingly, scratch golfers only make about 2 more birdies per round versus a 20 handicap. But the flip side of that is that scratch golfers make about 6 less double bogeys or worse than a 20 handicap. So it's really about eliminating that big number. So to show you what I'm talking about, let's say here on this first hole, I've gotten out of position. I pulled my ball way to the left here, and I'm now blocked out by this tree. And the last thing I want to do is become that meme, because trust me, I've done this way too many times. You know, the one where he says, haven't hit a fairway all day, but thinks he sees a window. Well, I'll tell you what, that is the #1 way that you can turn these quickly into really big numbers. So what I found is that as soon as I get out of position like this and I'm blocked out, I'm immediately thinking, okay, I can definitely make bogey from here, and that becomes my focus. No longer thinking I need to pull off some sort of tour shot to get it on that green to still set myself up for a birdie putt. And who knows, even if I was to just play it back to position, I could still make a par if I put that next shot close. But one really, really important thing here, so many times, I've done this in the past, and maybe you guys can relate, when you do decide to just punch it back out or play it back out into position, there's often this thing where you just kind of phone it in. You just pick a club and you hit it, and then you end up in more trouble. So play this shot, and this is something that I've done extensively, is try to discipline myself to play this shot as if it's as important as any other shot. So what I'll do is first gather as much information as I can. I know across the way there is water, so if I do hit it too hard, I could end up there. So here I'll use my rangefinder to fire that maximum number. I know I've only got 120 yards to that water. I'll also fire an approximate landing area where I want the ball to end up, out there safely in the fairway at 75 yards. Other tools I'll often use is I've got the GPS maps on my watch. I can take a glance there, or even the maps on my phone. But most important takeaway here is, 1, don't make a bad shot worse with a dumb shot by trying to thread the needle here where that ball could just go anywhere and possibly even end up in that water. And 2, once you do commit to playing back into position, still put the time and the focus into making sure that you're hitting a smart, well thought out shot by gathering as much information as you can. So played that ball safely back out to the fairway, left myself plenty short of the water, and most importantly, I didn't try to play some massive bending, hooking shot into the green, a hero shot that if it didn't turn would definitely end up wet. Now what I can do is simply finish up, hit it onto the green in 3. I still have a par putt. If I 2-putt, I get out of here with bogey, and nothing worse than that. All right, so this next tip was a bit of a surprising one for me, and this is something that I learned from a former tour pro. And I asked him, mid or high handicappers, what is one way that we can score consistently better? And what he said surprised me. He said, for these longer or mid-range approach shots, he actually said to leave our trusty laser rangefinder in the cart and instead rely on GPS. So for these types of shots, what I do is I look at my GPS watch and I'm getting my front, back, middle number, and I'm really just going for the middle of the green. What we find is that it's far better when it comes to consistent scoring to get that ball on the green, and there's a reason why they put these pins in tougher locations. It's to entice us to go after them, and it effectively makes the green smaller. And here again, this is another spot where those shot scope stats really back it up. Surprisingly, on average, a 15 handicap hits about 3.8 greens per round, whereas a 5 handicap hits more than that, almost double it, at 7.4 greens per round. So getting those greens in regulation is far more important than chasing those pins. And the other reason why I personally like to use my GPS distances rather than using a rangefinder for these shots, and I did this a lot in my under par round, is that I find I have a little bit of trouble judging that depth from these longer distances. And often what I was doing was I was firing a pin that was in the back of the green, and I'm using that as my landing number. And what was happening was I was very often an easy mistake to go just a yard or two long, and I was off the back of the green. So here I'm looking at my watch. I've got 130 to the front, I got 170 to the back, and 150 to the middle. That gives me 40 yards to work with. I pick that middle number, and if I'm on, I've got a birdie putt. Granted, it may be a long one because I'm not aiming for the pin, but I can 2-putt, get my par, and going back to what we said before, at least take those big numbers out. I'm telling you, if there's one thing that's really going to change your scoring, it's just prioritizing getting on those greens. So give that laser rangefinder a rest for a minute, use your GPS distances instead, and you can save that laser rangefinder when we're inside 100 yards and we're going to really chase those pins. So that's a perfect example right there. I was aiming for the middle of the green, and because of the wind and because I ended up pulling it a little bit left, I ended up on the left side of the green. With that pin a bit left, if my aim point had been the pin and I hit the exact same shot, I would have missed the green left. So it's all about here giving ourselves the biggest possible target and prioritizing getting on the green and having our next shot be a putt. All right, so this next tip has been something that's really helped me build my confidence. And as many of you guys would know, the more confident you are, the better you're going to play. They kind of feed off of each other. And really what it comes down to is redefining exactly what a good shot is. And this distance is the perfect example. We're about 125 yards out. And I think because so many of us watch the PGA Tour highlight reels, we start thinking that if we don't put this within 6 feet, then it's a bad shot. And then we hang our head, and then it becomes a compounding effect where we start to play poorly because we've lost that confidence. So it really boils down to reassessing and reimagining what a good shot here is. And this is where those shot scope statistics have really helped me, because it may be surprising, but believe it or not, the average 15 handicap has a proximity of 92 feet from 150 yards, and from 100 yards, their average proximity is 59 feet. Even better golfers, like a 5 handicap, average about 63 feet from 150 yards and 41 feet from 100 yards. Even taking that a step further, PGA Tour pros from that same distance average about 23 to 26 feet from the hole when it comes to proximity. So remember, those ones that stick in real tight, those darts that you see on television, those are the highlights. Those are the outliers. So here again, it really comes down to reassessing that if I put this ball really anywhere on this green, even if it's a long birdie putt, it's still a birdie putt and it's still a good shot. It's really setting realistic expectations. And now as I'm looking at this shot and I'm setting my own personal expectations, I know from my ShotScope stats that my average proximity from this distance is 78 feet. And that doesn't mean I'm always staring down an incredibly long putt. In fact, 27% of the time, I put this shot within 15 feet. But more importantly, when we know that proximity, our average proximity, and we understand better what a real expectation is here, not only will it help build confidence if we do hit it on the green, even if we're 30 feet from the pin, but it also better helps us set our aiming points by knowing what our distribution is, looking around, looking at bunkers and things like that. And like we mentioned in the last tip, picking smarter targets that fall within that zone. So again, here, 125 yards, I'm not looking to put this thing to tap in distance. If I get it there, great. If not, as long as I'm on the green, I'm gonna know that's a good shot and it'll help to build that confidence hole after hole. All right, so just estimating that's probably 30 feet from the pin, but again, that's well within my average proximity. It's well within those averages we talked about for those 15 and even 5 handicap. So I can say that's a great shot. Even though that's gonna be a tough birdie to make, I can lift my head up and not have any of my confidence wane because of the fact that I didn't put it to 6 feet. Realistic expectations will change your mindset and change your game. So use those stats, set those expectations, and trust me, it'll make you enjoy the game even more. All right, as we step up to this really testy par 3, the next tip is something that I think has helped me more than anything else. And that's really asking myself, where is the trouble? In fact, in my under par round, I got into a habit on every shot of asking my caddy one specific question. I asked him, where don't I want to miss? And that really goes back to that idea, like we said earlier, of avoiding the big number. So many of us, and this is something I've done for a long time, I put such a focus on the target. Let's say that's the pin, and I just kind of get that tunnel vision focusing on just that. And what ends up happening is that I'm misunderstanding the full layout of the hole and the areas that are designed to really get me into trouble. So now I've shifted my focus. And here I always start by assessing all the spots that could possibly put a big number on my scorecard. All right, so assessing this hole real quick. Obviously, I don't have a caddy with me today, but I can use those same tools that we've been discussing, things like a rangefinder, the hole maps, using my GPS on my watch, and just using my eyes to look around. I can see that there's a ton of trouble right. There's no water there today, but that all is hazard. I can see that that runs up short of the green, so if I'm short, I could be in it. But what I can see is that the smart miss is gonna be either left or long because there's plenty of places there where I can still recover. All right, so now that we know where all that trouble is, we've fully assessed everything, we can pick a smart target. And again, I'm a bit of a data nerd, so I love validating this with statistics. So I was looking a little bit deeper into the ShotScope statistics, and they have something that they call tee shots in trouble. And what those are is anytime you hit a tee shot that ends up in a hazard or somewhere that creates, again, that big number that we're trying to avoid. And interestingly, golfers who average shooting in the 90s are getting about 6 of these tee shots in trouble per round. And if you compare that to golfers who usually regularly shoot in the 70s, they're only having about 2 tee shots in trouble per round. So we're setting realistic expectations again. We're not completely eliminating them, but by picking those smart targets, by asking ourselves, where is the trouble, we can have less of those tee shots in trouble per round, and it'll lead to less big numbers. There we go, safely on the green. And again, within that proximity we talked about, we're about 20 feet for birdie. Hopefully get out of here with no worse than par. That one actually came back down that hill and ended up even closer than I thought. And we're at about 8 feet there, which is definitely makeable for birdie. But again, it comes down to setting expectations, because if you want to score well, one of the biggest things that really need to understand is that you need to putt well. And this is one of those spots where those shot scope stats really do prove just how important putting is. In fact, for a 15 handicap, putting is 42% of all shots, which is about 32 putts per round. And golfers who shoot in the 70s average 2 fewer 3 putts and 2 fewer missed putts inside of 5 feet. So if we want to take something away from that, and we want to play like those golfers who are shooting in the 70s, that means we need to find a way to get closer to their statistics. We need to be making 2 or so more of those short range putts per round, and we need to be able to lag those long putts closer just like they're doing. And a way that I personally have worked on this is by diving deep into my own putting stats on ShotScope and seeing where I need to put most of my focus when it comes to practicing. So where that becomes so helpful when I'm able to really look at all of those different distances on my putting statistics is really understanding where I can put the most work in my practice time. But if you're going to kind of sway it one way or the other, I would say the best and the most low-hanging fruit is to work on nailing down those short putts, getting that make percentage as high as possible, and also on those longer lag putts, seeing if you can get them close, because that definitely is what the pros are doing, and it'll quickly help eliminate those 3 putts. Beyond that, it's just being realistic with these mid-range putts. The make percentage on these, even for the best golfers, is not incredibly high, but when they do go down, you do end up with a birdie. Let's see if we can get one here to close it out. Bang, there it is. So hopefully these help you guys. Again, like I said, no swing changes. We didn't talk about anything with technique. It's all about strategy and mindset. And these are things that I've picked up over the years learning this game that have really helped me and finally got me over the hump of breaking par for the first time ever. I hope it helps you guys. If you have any of your own tips, drop them in the comments below. In the meantime, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.